Good evening, folks. Thanks for coming in. Start of another week, and we are got a heat wave on the way from about Wednesday, Thursday, hopefully. But we'll wait and see. The shorts will be out anyway. So tonight we are joined by this lady. Tonight we're joined for the first time by this young lady. She's an artist, paranormal historian. And the start of Celeb Help My House is Haunted, Bethan Briggs Miller. Good evening,
Hello.
Bethan.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm good, though. I'm good. I'm just, as I said before we came on, I'm just waiting on the heat wave to come.
Yeah, I really hope it doesn't. I really like being a paranormal podcaster. That sounds interesting. A paranormal.
Sometimes I get my words kind of.
Oh, same. And they sound more interesting in the end. So yeah,
they do. You can invent new words. You say something, and you
say
think
it with enough gusto, and everyone will believe it.
You say something here. I like the sound of that. I'm going to keep saying that, and people just kind of look at you if you need professional help or whatever. There's the island for Phantom Seekers Paranormal. We're going through to visit her. She's doing our lunch for us on Friday afternoon. So she's from the east side, but we don't hold it against her. She's a lovely wee lady.
I'm waving. Can people? Is this video as well?
We're on YouTube, so she should be able to see you waving.
Because I always do that on the podcast. I'll be like, this thing was this big. And my co-host has to go, Bethan, this is audio. No one can see you. Because I use my hands a lot.
Do you not find that it's weird? I did a radio show, I don't know, a couple of years ago, whatever it was. And they asked me to go in and I did it. And it was really, really weird because you're not looking at anybody. I couldn't even see the host. I was looking at
really unnatural
sound bars or something.
Yeah, you just think you're just talking into the void.
And I could hear the host talk. We were talking away, but I was just looking at kind of sound bars, and I thought that's not what I'm used to. That's kind of spooky. Pardon the pun. But you should be used to it. You're quite a popular lady.
Well, I was going to say I get about, but that sounded wrong. Yeah, I keep busy. But again, I was just thinking I do that, and then I always do like quotation marks. But even now, it's been 3 years of doing audio stuff, and I still can't get used to it.
No, I've done it once, and I don't think I'd do it again. There's Laura, she's one of ours. I don't think I'd ever get used to it. But see, you're quite a busy lady.
Yeah. Got lots.
I'm going to ask you the question you've always been asked, because you're a paranormal. I'm just going to use that word for now on.
Do it. Own it.
You think it should?
Yeah, it's like horror and paranormal. Paranormal.
That's my word, folks. You heard it here first.
I'm
going to write it down because I'll forget by the time the show's finished. So, I mean, you're a lady of many talents, obviously.
Yeah, I'm spinning too many plates, really, but they're up. They're spinning.
So how did you, what did you, because also you're an artist, you're a paranormal historian, I was going to say a folklorist.
Yes, folklorist.
I was saying hands are an important part of the conversation.
Yes, they are. Thank you.
You get these people that kind of talk with their hands, don't you?
Yeah, I'm going to make most of it tonight. I'm going to be.
And I went over there, and then I was down, and I stood up, and
that big.
Aye, it's like you're directing a plane or something like that. Everything. And the thing is, people actually watch your hands more than they watch you.
Yeah.
If you see I was over there, they go at that, or down there, kind of thing. So what did you get into first?
I think I got into folklore first because it all started with this little tiny pamphlet. Whenever you go anywhere in Britain, I don't know if it's the same anywhere else, but we're very good at our local ghost pamphlets. They're only about that thick. Every county has one, and I was in a charity shop in my hometown in Wales, and there was a clear out in one of the secondhand bookstores, and I found a really old dusty Glamorgan folklore pamphlet. I read it cover to cover again and again and again, and it fell apart. I've had to get a second copy because my part is just ravaged by how many times I read it. But it started like my love of it, and I think also that it was taking place in areas I knew. So like I was like, oh, that street. Oh, I go to school on that street. Oh, there was a demon dog on that street. So I was the nerd going into class then, where everybody was on about, like, I don't know who was popular at the time, Blink 182, and then everyone just going Metallica, and everyone was going really hardcore rock. And I was like, but did you know there's a mermaid down the seaside there? And so I was just like the little sparkly one trying to like talk about fairies when everyone was trying to grunge. It was grunge, and it wasn't good to like fairies at grunge time.
Usually you see it in the movies, don't you, that one girl or boy, whatever, that's kind of separated from the rest of the class, or kind of Wednesday Addams kind of thing, sitting in the corner.
That's pretty cool. I'll go with that. Yeah, the Wednesday Addams in the corner with my book.
I like people like that, you know, because they're different, you know. Sarah and I discussed Paranormal before coming to Glasgow with you in the car before. Sarah and Laura.
With someone else before now?
I don't remember that. But then I will be honest, half the time with Sarah and Laura talking in the car, I kind of switch off and just, you know, no offence, but you know, with two.
I know what Laura's next message is going to be.
No, Laura stays literally 2 minutes for us, actually. It's about a 2-minute walk, so I'm expecting.
Well, then I'd be extra careful. She's got a Christmas tree behind her. She's not afraid to use.
To go. But you know how when people are talking in the car and you're just driving and you kind of zone out?
Mm.
You know, that kind of happens.
I ain't getting into this. You.
I'm not dragging you. I'm not dragging you in a domestic, honest. You know? But since she stays literally 2 minutes away, I can see her coming through the back door as well. So we're all good. We're all safe. Eileen's asking, what hat do you prefer?
Ooh, folklorist. Every time. I love being a paranormal historian, an artist, but at the minute I'm having the most fun with folklore because I'm one half of the directors of the East Anglian Folklore Centre. We've been up since October. We're crowdfunding at the minute because it's a bit of a weird funding landscape at the moment. There's hardly any funding out there for stuff that we're doing, but we're trying. But the minute it's self-funded, and we put on lectures. We've got a library, about 700 books, paranormal and folklore, cover all 14 year. We've got the 14 Times back catalogue. You know, it's a really nice resource space.
Mm-hmm.
We're hoping to get that open for longer. And we're trying to bring back some local like rituals and storytelling. And then I do Eerie Essex podcast, which is paranormal and supernatural and folklore. And I always like the folklore stories because some of them they can be at the same time horrifically dark and hilariously funny at the same time. You don't really get that in any other realm like history or anything. And yeah, I like traditions and where we were more connected to the land. And I think out of everything in like the spheres that we all travel in, getting connected back into the land and I suppose space, but I think that's really important and why it's important to bring that back and bring that knowledge back. And I'm doing an MA at the moment and writing a folk horror, so folk.
Folks, Laura saying that you witnessed this better and I've just been threatened on this show. That's awful. I'm disgusting. I'm full of weird and wonderful info. Do you want me to come round? See, told you she's literally 2 minutes away. You know. No, dear, it's fine. I know you're a busy lady with your crocheting and such. She does crochet.
I want Laura to come round. I want to talk about weird and wonderful.
What do you want me?
Come back to Essex.
Laura, stick your shoes on and run around if you want, though. It's time up to yourself. You know where we live. I know where you live. That's kind of spooky, isn't it?
You're doxing yourself.
What I believe is based on truth passed through the ages. But no, yes. What you say, people try to educate people, but try to let people know about the past and or the bits and pieces that are out there. It is important, because history in itself is important. And just what you were saying about where you went to school, and what have you. We're doing a thing called the Wallace Trail, and I'm born and bred Glaswegian, and I think it was episode 2, 3 maybe, was in Glasgow, and we're doing it with the Society of William Wallace, and there was places in Glasgow that I passed thousands of times, and I had no idea about the history behind it, A quick example is the Belle de Bray Monument, and have you heard of the necropolis in Glasgow?
Yes, never been, but yeah.
Oh, you need to come up.
I don't know where the entrance is. I wouldn't know where to find.
It's easy to find. It's a bridge of size. You just go across the bridge. There's a few gates to it, but I've been in there many, many times, past it, and I've seen this stone monument and just drove by it. And it wasn't until we did the Wallace Trail that I found out that this area was where William Wallace had one of his first battles.
Oh, it's one of those things. Until you could pass it every day, and these little nuggets of local legends.
That's why I like history as well, because the amount of stuff that's happened in the past that people aren't aware of, and they maybe walk down that road street every day. I'm good, but I can be weird and wonderful here. Don't worry about that. Plus, I'm deaf there. That she wears hearing aids, so I think we're safe. I don't think she's going to show up at the door, which is a shame, because we would love her to come round.
Yeah.
You need to say that, but don't you? Because she's watching. So you need to say that.
I'm all the way down here. I'm good.
Where is it you're from? I don't want your address, just the general area.
Well, I'm around the Colchester area in Essex, so Britain's oldest town. There's a lot of history here.
I was just going to say tons of history. So what's your kind of favourite era in history? Have you got a favourite kind of time? Or?
It depends where. I mean, Essex, well, especially Colchester, history-wise, a lot of what is the popular history, the one the tourist, the local tourist board try to push, is the Roman history, which is interesting. But myself and like the local podcasters and with the East Anglia Folklore Centre is trying to turn the way that people are talking about the witch trials. So, I mean, the witch trials happened across Britain, but East Anglia was the worst in England. And it wasn't a witch trial, it was gendercide. And some of the signs around the area still say, this is where the witch was kept. And it's like, that's where an innocent woman was kept. It's just, so that piece of history, that sort of talking about 1600s. Yeah. And the folklore that came out of that, and seeing the different side of it as well. So yes, it was sometimes accused or be accused. It was a terrifying time, but also you see communities where these women, yes, sometimes men, mostly women, these cunning folk who were the midwives, the doctors, they were protected because of how important they were to a community. So often it was accuse somebody else to protect the person who's probably closest to being a herbalist. And I was reading something the other day, and I need to find out where I read it. Do you ever read something and think that's so interesting, I need to get that so I can reference it, and I cannot find it? But it was something like, I've lost it. So if anyone listening knows it, there was a time where I think they worked it out, the amount of people who were killed and murdered in that time frame for being a witch. We lost about 300 years of medicine and knowledge. We'd be so much further advanced now. Just again, you see it all the time in the NHS, going back to trying holistic things, trying different medicine that perhaps, they talk about, we're going to do dry needling to help your pain, Beth. And it's like, isn't that just acupuncture? But you don't want to call it acupuncture. just like repackaging something that people have known about for hundreds of years. So yeah, I'd love to know if they hadn't have had that time, how far advanced we'd be.
It was a dark that we've covered a lot of the witch trials. Was saying I can hear you. Haha. I've seen Wayne Sneeden is from Colchester. You may know him. Truth Beyond Paranormal and Spookinori.
We live in the same village. We've never met. Me and Wayne are literally a stone's throw from each other, and it's one of those. We keep saying we're going to go for a pint, and it never happens. Not because neither of us don't want to go for a pint. It's like, oh, we'll go soon, and then weeks go by. Oh, Wayne, we should go for a. But yeah, Wayne is cool. His front garden has got a ghost on it.
I know what you mean. You arrange to meet up with people. We've done it. No doubt you've done it countless times better. With investigations and what podcasts and stuff like that. So, right, I need to get you on the show. Right, I will get it arranged. And before you know it, a month or two's passed, and you think, wait a minute, I was meant to,
Yeah.
And I've done a few times and went back to people and they say, well, you never gave me any dates, and I say, I know, I totally forgot.
Yeah.
I didn't forget about you. I just forgot to mail you.
Yeah.
And
I always give people full permission to please, if you don't hear from me, to message me again. I've got ADHD. I've got all this. My brain is just.
Aye, so your brain's on full pep. I knew Wayne before he was famous. But I mean, see the witch trials. Yeah, we've covered a lot of the witch trials, and particularly Pendle, with Simon Ed Whistle many times. Probably Pendle. What we've got Michael Roberts coming on, who's taking over for Simon, because Simon's retiring for doing top hat tours, so Michael's taking the reins. So we got him coming on.
Nice.
It was a really, really dark time, and as you say, it was accused or be accused, and it was a way to get rid of a land rival, a love rival. You know yourself, Betty. You just to point the finger. He's a witch, she's a witch, and that was it.
I didn't realize, because we've got Matthew Hopkins came from not too far away here. I didn't realize that he died at 27. Just how much carnage he wrought.
Caused. It was a way to make money. Mark
it was money.
Is a prime, prime example. He just went from village to village, and of course, in the 1600s, the whole country was gripped with the fear of witchcraft. And this guy comes along and says, "I'm the witch finder general, and I'll hunt them out and get rid of them." So people were throwing money at him and all sorts, and it was a way to get, climbing the ladder of favour with the king.
And the true number is really, we don't know, because half the time we came across with Erie, Essex, there's a part of a road called Betty Potter's Dip on the outskirts of Colchester, and the woman who was killed there, a cart of hay was going past her, and she said hello to them, and the wheel fell off. So naturally,
she was a witch.
And they couldn't wait for the witchfinder to get there, so they hung her themselves. And because the witchfinder never got there and it wasn't put through the assizes, there's no record of it. It's only been passed down orally. We know that it happened through diaries. How many happened like that never made it to the records? And how many, even if they were... This is something I didn't know until I started looking into it. We've got an amazing village up by the Rochford area called Canewdon. I don't know if you've heard of Canewdon.
I've heard of Canewdon.
It's the village the witchfinder feared to dread. So this proves that it was just money. He never went there or sent anyone there because they actually feared. Oh, there are actually witches there. They were actually scared of them. There was a coven that had. There's always 9. And they will always be there as long as the church tower, there's always that link between covens and church towers and bells. And if the church still stands, then the coven's still going strong. And I hadn't realised that this had happened during the witch trials until looking at this village, that even if you were found innocent, you could stay in that prison for a long time, paying off your bed and board. And
Mhm.
so many people died in prison innocent because they couldn't pay to be kept in prison.
It was insane. It was, thinking, but obviously back then it was normal, normal practice. But thinking back now, I've been told I was a witch or a healing woman during regression. So you better watch out if you ever meet the Eileen.
Eileen sounds awesome.
She's we've met her a few times, and she's nuts,
Good.
which most people in the paranormal are anyway.
You can't be like just normal in this. We're paranormal. We're paranormal.
We're paranormal. I don't know if I can claim it or not. I'll need to consult Sarah as well about that conversation Laura's claiming to have had in the car. But no, it was a horrible dark time. As you say, that to pay to be kept in prison, and as I say, it was just a way to get, to get rid of people. I mean, a classic example is with the Pendle Witch Trials where I was nutter. She was never actually accused of witchcraft. She wasn't in court. She was in court over a land dispute with Roger Knowles, the presiding judge at the trials, and she won, which was totally unheard of at that time. And Roger Knowles, he, not only did he lose the land, but he lost a big part of his reputation, his pride, his ego, everything. And then he decided to turn around and accuse Alice Nutter of being a witch.
And nobody put two and two together.
We know that, all that Alice was executed with the rest of them. And so, that was Knowles. He got the land back. And Alice was gone, the rival was gone. My great-gran always told me witch's fingers king and skinny. My great-gran always told me at witch's fingers king and skinny. I don't get that, Laura. At witch's fingers king and skinny.
But that's nice about Eileen.
She's a wee delight.
Long and skinny.
Long and skinny, that's what it is. Right, got you now, dear. You kind of threw me there for a wee second. It's unimaginable what people endured in less than foreign time. That's true, because people didn't know any better, and a lot of it was put down to witchcraft. Look at John Law when he collapsed, before the witch trials. It turned out it was actually a stroke that he took. Whereas back then, he'd been cursed by,
especially I think there's a couple of cases. We've got St. Osyth around the corner from us, where they had the cage, and it's where they kept a lot of the women before they went to the assizes in Chelmsford. If the Colchester Castle was overrun, it was like one of the places where they kept them. And one of the women who was there, Ursula Kemp, she was a midwife. She was a local healer, and she was accused by a distraught mother whose baby probably had cot death. And even now we're still trying to get to the bottom of what could be causing that. It's now a plethora of reasons, but it would have just looked like someone had cursed. Something like unnatural had befallen. And if you are, if you're grieving mother, you are going to lash out, and poor Ursula was the blame for it. I mean, there had been bad blood between the neighbours, but I think that, there's probably a lot of those cases where they tried to help and nature just did its thing, and then...
I lost a daughter to cot death back in 1992, and we never got an explanation of, infant death syndrome. It was called by, I don't know if it's still called the same thing, infant death syndrome, and You're all right, you've lost a check, but you're looking for answers. You're looking for somebody to tell you why did this happen, and people are telling you we don't know. You know, we could be this, it could be 101 different things, and you know, but obviously back then, if it happened to a child, then the person was bewitched.
Yeah.
Whatever you know, cuss, whatever you would call it. And we will not, as you say, we will never know the true number. I think I might have this wrong, but I think in Scotland the estimate is roughly about 6,000.
Roughly, yeah, I think, yeah.
Up here, I might have that wrong.
I think because the sort of image of a witch after the trial you see in pictures is being burnt, but most were hung down here. But I think that's when the law changed, so witchcraft stopped being. I've got to get the right way around now. It went from heresy to something else. What is it? I can't think of the. No, it's gone. I'll remember it in a minute. But the law changed, and one was what's the one against the crown? Heresies against religion. Treason. That's it. So it was treason, and that was burning, and then it changed to heresy, which is when the punishment was hanging. But I think the law changed slightly later in Scotland, which is why there was more burnings. But yeah, I think the rough number you're right, 6,000.
I know. There was two separate witchcraft act. The Witchcraft Act. There was one in Scotland, one in England, and the one in Scotland forbid the use of torture.
I didn't know that.
When interrogating an accused witch, the only exception was if the authorities thought that this person was in league with many people. Torture could be used then to try and extract names of the conspirators, basically. But in England, torture was allowed.
Yeah.
I think it was 1573 the Witchcraft Acts were passed. I probably get that date wrong, but there was two different ones. As you say, most of the witches up here were burned. Most of the accused, you go meeting it, still calling them witches. Most of the victims up here were burned, whereas in England they were hung. You know, there were people hung up here, but see, you know, I always say so much of these times is documented. She's right enough, you know, as you said, you know, there will be hundreds, maybe thousands of other people that were tried and executed that were never written down anywhere.
Yeah.
And
people taking the law into their own hands.
You know, and the other thing was, and I always found this quite bizarre, you know, throwing them in the river. If they drowned, they were innocent.
Yeah.
You know, and if they floated, they were guilty. Can you imagine that person getting thrown?
You know, you're going to die either way.
You know, you're going to die, as you say. Either way, you're going to die. But what would be going through your mind when you get thrown in that river? You think, how did they come up with that? You know, if you drown, you're innocent. And then what happens after? Oh, well, we got that one, right? Let's move on to the next one.
Pretty much.
She was innocent, you know, my bad. Who's next, kind of thing? I've been informed by the appropriate person that, in fact, it was Paranormal. That's a story. Aye, that's right. I remember it now. And there's only one R in that word there, dear. But, you know, so I was the first to come up with Paranormal. They were talking, Sarah, I was on the way back to Edinburgh, actually. Sarah and Laura were talking about the other thing, which we won't get into. You know, it's just for another late night show, say 1 or 2 in the morning.
That sounds interesting.
Don't even get me. I get this every day, Bethan, with the two of them. You know, it's back and forward, but that's what it was. It was porn. I'm not even going to say it actually. Come in. Oh, come on. Laura's she's got this phone. She's had it for, I don't know, quite a few weeks now, and she still cannot get used to the texting thing, you know. So a lot of her comments come up that don't make sense, and then she'll kind of correct it, you know. Well, I say it was a dark time, but then thankfully, the beginning, like about 1730, 1733, the king then kind of started to realise, well, wait a minute, maybe these people aren't witches.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole tide kind of shifted. And the witch trials faded out, basically.
Mm.
But say thousands and thousands of people, England and Scotland, were put to death for no reason at all, or because somebody basically didn't like them.
Yeah.
And it's a part of your history that will never, you can't wipe it out.
But it's important not to. Have you heard of the Witches of Scotland campaign?
We actually interviewed the Witches of Scotland about 3 years. It's on our YouTube channel. We interviewed them. They were running a campaign to get them all pardoned.
Yes, and I really liked how they were going about it, because I think I interviewed them as well for a conference, and I never realized, again, it's the power of words. It's beyond pardon. Pardon means that they did something wrong and we forgive them. They need even though it happened years and years ago, it needs an apology. It should never have happened. So not a pardon as such, because they've put a couple of plaques around Essex, and it's pardoning. It's like, but that's still implying they did something wrong. They were hunted. It should never have happened. And when you look at the world today, there are still women. Oh, I won't go off on one, but I'm. Oh.
No, feel free. I mean, I dare say there was a certain percentage of the people that were, actual witches, that did dabble in the cult or whatever. I dare say of the thousands and thousands that were executed, there was maybe a small percentage that were kind of guilty. One prime example is the Salisbury witches. The 3 women who were tried the same day as the Pendle witches, but they were found not guilty, basically let go. But one of the stories that the court gets told is that it was something to do with a baby in a coffin, and they were seen digging up the grave and taking the baby out. And about 200 years later, these 2 doctors were sitting talking, and they decided to go and get permission and exhume the grave of this baby. And they dug up the grave, and the coffin was empty.
Right, so they had.
So that makes you think, were these 3 ladies actually guilty?
Of something.
Of something, whatever it might have been, who are we to judge? Eileen's asking if you believe in fairies.
Absolutely, 100%.
They were pardoned eventually. Eileen, I want to shout, I do believe in fairies.
I've seen one, so.
I don't know. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm kind of plain and simple. I've never been into fairies and stuff like that.
You should. There's a really good podcast called the Modern Fairy Sightings Podcast, and it literally is what it says on the tin. And they talk. It's Jo Hickey Hall. She's a really lovely lady. She's got one of those voices that you could just listen to for hours, and she interviews people about their experiences and the different, all levels of people from all walks of life have had these experiences that it's weird. Of all the things that happen, UFOs, ghosts, poltergeists, even some cryptids, fairies is the one that everyone goes, really? And nature spirits, it's well documented in the right places, but we have assigned it to fairy tales. Disney have made them these little silly things. They're not. They're old.
I like Tinkerbell. Tinkerbell or Peter Pan. So you say you've seen one?
Yes. So I didn't tell anybody about it for a while, again because of the stigma. But I was in. So in my garden, I've got like a little herb garden that goes around the kitchen door. Then I can literally just lean out, get some herbs and shove them in the pan. And it was during lockdown, so me and my son had done some rewilding. You know, we all went through a rewilding stage, putting
We did that.
rewilding.
I think the country, we get right into gardening. I mean, we're in gardeners, you know, and but we get right into gardening as well because we've nothing else to do. So I, you know, you weren't alone in that one.
Yeah, it was good fun. We found some like yellow rattle and all these different like native plants and planted them. And we made a fairy house. We put crystals in the garden. He got really into learning about the lore of fairies. And then I was cooking one day and everyone was in the front room. So there was no one in the garden. And I heard this scuffling outside the door. And a couple of nights before, because it was one of the feast days, and as part of like the podcast and everything, I did a little video saying, "Oh, we're going to do like the traditional thing of leaving out milk and honey," and then we got back the next morning. There was full of ants, whatever. But so yeah, I looked out the window. I looked out around the door, and there was take this what you want from this, a little man about that big. And he had a hat on. He was like a potato-y shape, like mottled and green, almost like I can't think of. Imagine if Mr. Potato Head had a hat on, but was all like stone colours and like mossy.
Mm-hmm.
And I only saw it very briefly, and it looked at me as if, shit, she can see me. And it was a look of surprise. It was like, you're not supposed to be able to see me. And then it ran off down the garden, effing and jeffing.
Right. You should, I mean, I can't really, you know, I'm
And I was
kind of
just
on the
there, like,
fence with fairies, you know. As when you see something, you think, did I just actually see that?
yeah. And it looked pissed off. It was like, it was doing something in me herbs, picking rosemary or something, and it was not impressed that I'd seen it.
Maybe it's some, I don't know. Maybe it's some kind of rule or something that they're not to be seen by, you know, humans, whatever you want to call it, you know, whatever the term is, I don't know. Maybe a cardinal rule, basically. I spent most of my childhood looking for fairies in the woods at the bottom of my garden.
That's a good childhood.
Witchcraft is not far from what is happening in Ireland right now, with the bodies of 800 children babies are thought to have perished in a furnace.
Oh.
No or. I don't know what that no or means. No, that's correct. But I mean, no, as you say, you know, fairies, people look at you, and I think it's a lot to do with Hollywood, you know, Peter Pan, Tinkerbell, all that kind of thing, you know. And I'm not saying they don't exist. How, you know, let's face it, there are probably countless things out there that we don't know about that actually do exist around about us every single day. I mean, you get back.
I hope they do. What a boring, horrible world it would be if they didn't.
Well, that's it. I mean, even the paranormal spirits and stuff. I mean, you go back, you know, to maybe the late 1800s, early 1900s. People, if you were turning and say to somebody, you know, we can actually communicate with people who are passed on. No chance, you know. They would laugh it off, but then look at us today.
Oh, well, no, I'm supposed to look at after when was it now? After the First World War, you always see like a surge in spiritualism and people looking for answers after a big event. I think COVID was ours when the last resurgence started. People were like, there's got to be more to life than this.
I'm going to tell us background away because I notice I keep disappearing. I don't know why.
Fairies have got you.
I don't know. Possibly, I don't know if you noticed, but I noticed I kept just disappearing. So there's the background going. And we always find that there's a big resurgence in it when something like that happens. You know, as you say, the World War, COVID, when thousands and thousands of people were passed away. Families are looking for answers, are looking to contact them, you know. And so that reminds me of a time I was in the audience of a spiritual night, and on stage I could see a halo around this man who was getting a reading. The halo was getting brighter and brighter. And no one else, I think she means no one else
had it
could
or
see
see it.
But as I say, a couple of hundred years ago, if you were to say people will, there is life after death and we could talk to spirits, they'd probably maybe have burned you at the stake or something. Because obviously the church looks at it, you're not allowed to talk to the dead, basically. But I think the church is changing its kind of attitude now as well.
It's interesting to see how they're prepping for potential closure. Like, you get the sense that something's happening UFO-wise.
I believe in UFOs. I do believe. To my knowledge, I've never ever seen one. But to think that we're the only ones in the universe, galaxy, whatever, there's thousands of planets there. To think we're the only one, it's just ludicrous.
And that's it before you get onto different dimensions, and we coexist with different things. So, why can't there be a hiccup in the space-time?
I'm no scientific or anything. So I'm loose with that dimension. Eileen will tell you. She winds me up about it, actually. Our minds are restricted by social acceptance and stigma. You have to believe to even hope to see things. But our minds are kind of restricted and programmed, for want of a better word. That doesn't exist, that can't exist, blah, blah, blah. I mean, when I was a kid, if somebody says, the people, there's spirits walking about, ghosts walking about, no, because society says it's not a thing. But then when you actually start digging into it, yourself, and you get into it, and you get EVPs, signs, whatever it might be, then you start to think, there definitely is something to this.
Have you ever found as well that even when you start talking to someone and they're a diehard skeptic, not even skeptic, non-believer, they're like, no. And then there'll be a pause and there'll be but I did see this. Everybody's got but I did see this story. You just got to wait. Even the most diehard, no, it's all rubbish. However.
I know exactly what you mean. I've had people say, paranormal doesn't exist, ghosts don't exist. So, but have you ever had something happen to you in life that you can't explain, or you've heard something, you felt something, and you just and you do see them thinking, well, now you mention it, I felt my gran was in the same room at the same time as she passed away, whatever, and I think, well, how do you know that's no spirit talking to you? I know exactly what you mean.
You see it on what do you call it? Uncanny, where Danny Robbins will start any story, anything, that program on BBC, and he'll be like, do you believe in ghosts? And invariably the person will be like, no. And he'd be like, but you've seen one? And they went, yes. Like, nearly every single story he does is that people just cannot, even the most scientific mind is like, yeah, but I did see one, but I didn't, but I did.
They can't explain it. So, well, if you don't believe in it, you tell me what you saw. You explain to me, what you seen or what you heard. I mean, they'll say no. I mean, my dad, he was just for a company. I always call it. My dad totally didn't believe in it. When he was diagnosed with cancer and told, that's it, time's up, kind of thing. We used to laugh and joke about it. And he says, no, son, that's it. When your time's up, you're gone. Your eyes shut, you're gone. Nothing. But then, it must have been about 5-6 years ago. I was at Spiritual Church and he came through. And I felt like saying, I tell you, you old bugger.
Told you so.
That you still be about, but my dad, he was nothing. You get into the ground, that's it, lights out, basically.
See, to me, that makes less sense. That I find that harder to believe. But I know a lot of people find belief hard. It's molded, isn't it?
It's a kind of seesaw kind of thing. My favourite multi-layered dimension. See this woman, this is her winding. Let's do it again to the multi-strat. I'll explain this quickly to you. We've got a place where we do Loudon Cup. We've been doing it for about 4 years. And one investigation we done, we Rosie Carden, that was there. We got asked, are you ghosts? It was a clear EVP we got. We got asked, are you ghosts?
Yeah.
So we couldn't work this out. So we were doing a show, you know, sometime after it, and Irene started talking about the multi-layer dimensional existence, and I was lost. I was out that door, you know.
I totally believe that. Yeah, I think I
Um,
had an experience. I grew up in a really old house, and there's a long story. There was one entity that haunted it that ended in an exorcism, but I'll get onto that later. There was a ghost I saw once, and it was when we ever put anything new in. You get this a lot with houses where you've done a renovation or you've put something like an antique in. It sort of like stirs up something. And there was this bookcase, and I was coming from the kitchen to the living room, and I was going past the room with the bookcase, and I saw someone like looking up and like just sort of looking up, and then they looked at me and had the same like look on their face about seeing a ghost. And I was wondering, I wonder if in like 1812 someone saw someone with blue hair going through their house, and they were like, "What the?"
See that's interesting, because you know, see, we get asked, "Are you ghosts?" So I started to think, well, is that somebody for the future who thinks we're spirits?
Mm?
That they're actually picking. I'll stay your comments up in a minute, ladies. That they actually think it's the voices they're picking up a spirit, but it's actually us. And then that led me to thinking another. This is what I love about the paranormal. One question, you know, you get one question out another question.
We're going down the rabbit hole.
You start thinking about one thing and think, well, wait a minute. So So I'm going to ask you this question, Beth, because you've done many investigations and you've visited many places. When you go into say
I haven't actually. I am the nerd that stays behind doing the history.
Oh, you do
I'm the child sending out the Buffies.
All right, wow, that's corrected then.
You're Buffy.
But I do apologize. Don't I feel like an idiot now?
I'd love to go on an investigation. No one will take me.
No, you can come up with Scotland. We'll take you for a run. We'll take you for an investigation. Just jump on the motorway 4 or 5 hours and you're here.
Library and then cast me aside.
No, Bethan, you're not coming out tonight. You've got books to read.
Stay in the library.
You stay in the library. That's where you belong, Missy. Can I? Here's a question: when you do an investigation and say an old stately home, which is an absolute wreck, there's nothing there anymore, and you pick up on spirit. Now, are they spirit? In your opinion, are they spirits seeing you in the house the way it used to be, or are they seeing you in the house the way it is now? So are we visiting them, or are they visiting us?
I think that's a very good question, and I think it can be both and or either, because different kinds of ghosts, like time blips. There was certain ghosts I've seen. I say I've not done investigations, but I've lived in a blinking haunted house, and I do have some second sight, which my son has got, and I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. And yeah, you can tell when they go in my old house during the 50s, when they pebble dashed and just took all wrecked houses, basically. This beautiful old cottage. They took the lovely old stone staircase and then put a pine one in the corner. And you'd see someone walking up the middle of the for ages before we knew the staircase had moved. Like, I just saw someone going up mid-air, like up a staircase. I thought, oh, that's where the stairs used to be. That sort of like time blip where I don't know whether they'd see, but there were other spirits where I got the sense that they knew they were dead and they were visiting. Like there was whenever we did anything, my mum was bringing the old fireplace back to what it was. They got all this lovely old antiques. They had done a really good job of putting it back to what it would look like. And this lady in a green dress would turn up, and she'd just see her nodding. And I got the impression she knew she was dead. She was just coming back to make sure, oh, these are looking after the house. Nice. But then, like the guy that was shocked to see me, I think he was in his time, I was in my time, and for some reason we could see each other. I think there could be lots of different kinds. and sometimes happening at the same time, like you say. I don't know. I think it's exciting. I don't think it's. I like talking about it. I think it could be anything.
Here's another. I will put your comments up in a wee minute, folks. Here's another one. This is a brain boggler, right? So
Ooh.
we know we've got residual hauntings, where people are going about their business. Again, exactly. We do a place Loud and Kirk, but there's a farm nearby that's connections to the Kirk, and we've investigated there before. Every time you go up to the farm and the owners say the same thing, you always get the feeling that there's people just wandering about doing their daily jobs, whatever they did back in the day, and they're no aware of us being there. But then you get I'll call them intelligent spirits, no offense to the other ones, but that interact with you.
Yeah.
That you ask a question, they'll talk to you, basically, they'll answer you.
Yeah, you're not watching a recording or sensing a recording. There's actually a presence.
So you know that they can see you and they are aware of you being there. So you start to think, well, why are they different from the other ones?
I think you answered it, really, that you're picking up on. I mean, time, I'm going to use Doctor Who's expression, is a big ball of wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey jumble. And we've tried to make time into what we can manage to cope with our brains, by putting, the hours, the minutes, but it doesn't really work like that. So yeah, I think we are existing alongside every other moment in time. Sometimes we pick up on it, sometimes we don't. I think it depends on how tuned you are. It's like tuning into a radio. Sometimes you're going to be really tuned in and think, oh, I can sense things. Oh, there's something else going on here. Not necessarily a haunting, just, oh, I'm picking up on the other timelines, like multi-timelines. And then, as you say, you get the spirits, the visitations, the actual, those with purpose. They're there for a purpose, to visit or whatever. And they're very different things.
They're very different. What I'm picking your brain tonight, doll. Sorry, it's just
that's what
no doubt you get them, these random thoughts that pop into your head. And this is the last question I'm going to ask Betty, and then I'll put your comments up. A pinky promise. I will put them up. I started a thing last week. I've called it random questions. Every Tuesday, I just do a wee short live on Facebook. Just ask a random question, and it's just whatever pops into this block of wood up here. So last week, I just started it last week. The question was that, as far as we're aware, spirit does not have the same awareness of time as we do. So when we're investigating, and if we maybe, we get in contact with an intelligent spirit and we're maybe talking to them for about 20 minutes, say, are they aware that it's 20 minutes we've been speaking to them because they're interacting with us? Or are they, is it nothing to them? Does that make sense?
Possibly not.
It makes sense in my head.
I would have thought possibly not. Because sometimes you will get things happen after an investigation, won't you? So you'll ask a question, you'll ask the ghost, can you do this to let us know you're here? 2 days later, it might happen. Whether that's the time it takes to build up the energy to do it, or for the entity, for them, it was instantaneous.
For us, you see, this is another thing I asked before. When you do an investigation, say on a Saturday, and you leave that place, you walk out the gate, and then you get back the next Saturday. To us, that's 7 days, obviously. But to spirit, as spirit just seen us going out that gate, then walking straight back in. Or what do they do in between us no investigating? Where are they? Where do they go?
They're having their own podcasts. They're having their own YouTubes talking about us humans and how weird we are.
They probably think we are kind of weird. Better put these comments up.
It's called
my dad impacted me after ghost spooky tube or something. My dad came back to me 5 years after passing and admitted that it wasn't poo after all.
Oh, there you go.
It's like my father-in-law in his later years, he could see his brother who'd passed 10 years previous. My father-in-law had dementia now. Just because he had that does not mean he didn't hear or see his
That's
brother.
interesting what Laura's saying there, because I think that we're too quick sometimes to say, oh, it's dementia, oh, it's sleep paralysis. No, maybe your brain is just tuned into what's supposed to be there. You see so many. I know a lot of nurses and a lot of people who do end of care, and one of them is a medium who I trust because she doesn't want to be a medium.
Mm-hmm.
And she says death's actually quite beautiful. It's people actually go a long time before the machines say they've gone, and they're surrounded by this amazing like light. There's people who they've known, and there's other beings there, and they just go and they're happy, and it could be 10 minutes or half an hour before the machines say they've gone. And yeah, it's just amazing. I think, yeah. And it always bugs me when it's like the skeptic's answer with things is, oh, when I couldn't move in bed, but I could see this creature at the end of the bed. Yeah, it could be sleep paralysis. And yes, the brain could be doing the whole it's in between dream and sleep. But could it also be in that meditative state where it can see the thing that's always there, but we can't always see it? That's actually quite scary. It's always there. You're just in that right frame of mind where you can see it.
You see, as well, I know his brother was waiting for him. That is quite common, you know. When my dad was on his last legs, basically, he kept talking about his gran. His mum, my gran, you know. My mum's sitting, she's waiting on me, you know. And so and I've heard quite a few people that have said the same thing, you know, when they're getting just to that last bit, that they say, you know, there's my mum, or I can see my, was it, you know, brother, whoever. So I do believe that when your time comes, that somebody does come to collect you, basically.
Yeah, like picking you up from the station.
You know, come on, it's your time to go. I'll show you where to go, or you know, this is what happens, what have you. But you know, and as you say, skeptics, they can put it down to 101 reasons, but there's far too many accounts can do through the decades worldwide of people experiencing the same thing.
Well, yeah, the Hat Man. You know, things like there's something as specific as that. There's the Flannel Man. You know, there's very specific descriptions.
Mm-hmm.
It can't. I love it.
You think, no, it can't be a major big conspiracy. You know, all these thousands of people go together and say, right, let's make up a story. Do you know what I mean? About what happened. And it's funny. I mean, I've seen three of my relatives after the passed, you know, and when you go, I don't know if you ever have Bethan, but when you go, you just know they're not there. You know, you just get a feeling. I mean, my dad passed before I, you know, got into the paranormal and what have you. But when I saw him lying there, I just knew he was away elsewhere.
I've never seen a dead body, but I've been told. I've seen a picture of someone I knew who they were. I wasn't expecting to see it. It was someone I had met alive and then was shown a picture when they dead. I thought the person was showing me a movie prop.
Mm-hmm.
Even though it looked like them. I thought, oh, why someone made a prop of that person? Oh, when I realised what it was quite horrific. But yeah, no, it's they weren't there.
It's just, as I say, I did tell people about people say, well, what do you mean? I said, I can't describe it. I mean, you'd actually need to be in that situation. And it's just a feeling you get that, you know, they've just kind of got off the bed and left. That's the best way I can describe it. You know, and you know that they are somewhere. Where
It's
they
not
are,
like they're asleep. There's something that happened. I can't describe it either, but I know what you mean.
It's his brother, I fully believe he did. No, that's the wrong one. The other thing with Loudon I can't go over is the brown sheep. That was interesting. My Phil saw people already passed as he was passing. Nothing doubted. I witnessed it. But you know, as you see, my dad, you know, my mum, she's waiting on me and stuff like that. The brown sheep, we did an investigation of Loudon, and every time we mention the farm, we seem to get some kind of response. So one of the investigations I done, I says, you know, we were up at the farm, there's a round wall at the back of the farm. The farm dates back to 1543, I think. And I said, there's a round wall. Can you tell me what was behind this wall? And it came back, sheep. And so I said, well, can you tell me, you know, because there's black sheep and white sheep up there. I said, what colour were the sheep? Can you tell me the colour of the sheep? And it came back in a thick Scottish accent, brown.
Brown sheep.
So I asked, you know, a while later, I said, I've forgotten what colour the sheep was. Can you tell me again, please? And it came back, brown.
Wow. So, the accent as well.
About the accent, which is another theory I've got as well, with the different accents. But the owner, the farm, contacted us, I don't know, about a week later. He texted us to say, listen, you're not going to believe us. We've been here for X amount of years, and there's brown sheep in that field. We have never, ever had brown sheep an entire time we've been here. It says it might not be, you know, it might not be tied to your investigation. I'm just letting you know there's brown sheep up at this farm, which we've never ever had.
Amazing.
So it does, you know, it's these I mean, a lot of people might brush it off, but I think when you get things with that, don't brush. I'm not saying it's 100% true, but don't brush it off. Give it a wee bit of thought. Is there a connection? You know, because you know yourself, Bethan, spirit can find the weirdest ways to get in touch with us.
Yes.
You know, it could be anything. It's I think a lot of people imagine, you know, it's like a low-flying headstone or a table spinning or something, you know, but it can be the least obvious thing.
Well, I've got an active haunting at the moment, and it likes to use Alexa to play the Beatles at random times.
All right. Maybe it's a Beatles.
It could be a Beatles fan. It's a tall, dark figure that likes to lean around the door frames, and like if you look, you can see it leaning back. And I thought it was my imagination, but there's one night where I saw it at the corner of my eye. Oh, it's back again. And then my son Arthur turned around and went, "Did you just see that man lean around the door as well?" And I was like, "Yep, I did." And it like
somebody else sees it as well.
Multiple witnesses, yes. So yeah, Arthur's quite sensitive to stuff like that. So I want to get my medium friend to just come and have a look at the house, because it was getting him. He's not normally frightened, but he was getting a bit freaked out because it was bedtime and we were doing stories, and he was like, "Can you shut the door? I don't want to see it again." So I did, but I went out the door and I was like, "Now listen, you're welcome to haunt, do whatever it is you're doing. I don't get any bad vibes off you, but bedtime's bedtime. So go and haunt another room. And fair play your house."
Sometimes that's all it takes. I mean, you know, I used to stay in my own flat a few years back, and I had a spirit in my flat. You know, I thought there was a young man passed away in the flat before I moved in, but he would, you know, he moved my TV remote once, my keys as well. I had loads of Buddhas, and I was quite OCD. You know, Sarah Laura will tell you, I was quite OCD with my Buddhas. They were in a certain angle, you know, because I think there's a superstition you can't have two Buddhas facing each other.
No, yeah, I know what you mean.
So I was always quite particular, and I lived myself, and I could go into the house, and I would know that one of my Buddhas had been moved, even ever so slightly, that one had been moved.
Right.
You know, but it ended up, there was one night I was sitting watching a film. It was a Saturday night, and I had a galley kitchen that looked, you know, I was sitting in my chair and I could see the kitchen in front of me, and the bin lid came flying off. And I ended up losing my temper. I'm trying to watch this film. Would you give it a rest just till my film's finished? Then do what you want, kind of thing. You know?
Like you would to another human being, and like, "Oh, sorry."
Well, you see, that's the stage you go to. I actually started talking to him. You know, I say, right, I'm going to work now. I'll see you tonight. And I come in and say, guess what happened at work today? You know, because I was always in the belief, you know, it's just another person. So you get and just share your stories, whatever, with them, you know.
Also, with my beliefs, so a witch. So one of the first things I was told was talk to your house. It's a being. So I will just talk out loud sometimes, just say, "Oh, it just like you say, oh, I'm back. Oh, what a day!" And I feel better for
it becomes second nature.
it.
You know, right? That's me back. You actually see the rain outside. It's absolutely bucketing down outside. You know, and but no, I lost the rag this Saturday night. I watched my effing film. Just let me watch this, and then do what you want. Because I was really engrossed. I can't remember what film it was, and then just bang the bin lid. I was like, oh, you know. And
I was playing a computer game with Arthur, and the dining room chair just slid out, and I was like, not now. We're gonna get to the. We were doing like this timed run event, and it was like, not now, ghost.
I don't do it. Just give me a chance to do this or talk to this person or whatever. My friend lives in a haunted house, and Alexa is often used for spirit communication.
It's there as a tool. Yeah. I was wondering if my ghost was lonely because I had a little go on the spirit box and it was saying lonely, trapped, and it put on Eleanor Rigby again and again, and that's look at all the lonely people. So, oh, is my ghost lonely?
Maybe they do get like that. Like last week, I found a tiny white feather on my fireplace. Now, the day before, I gutted the living room, but there in the fireplace the day after was the tiniest white feather. Explain that.
White feathers do come around as a little message.
I've had it happen to me twice. The white feathers. One day I was in the town, and it's a pedestrian bit in the town, and I was just standing. I'd been at a petitions. I was standing out, and this lone white feather just trickled. I took a photo and put it in the page. Just, landed between my feet. There wasn't any wind or anything, but this feather just, appeared. And the same happened out in the front grass. One day I was out there, and this lone white feather just floated down. And I put it in the page, and this guy commented, well, it probably you ever thought it might be for a bird. And so I commented, possibly, but where's the rest of the feathers?
It's still nature interacting with you, and in a moment of beauty, I think that's pretty special. Even if it is, that's all it is.
The one in the town was the weirdest one, because you're in the middle of town, this one white feather just, and you think, and so you're looking up for a seagull or something, but there was nothing, And so you do start to think, but just when you're saying about spirits getting lonely, I dare say they do.
Especially if they're sort of trapped.
I mean, as far as we know, spirits have got the free will. They can go anywhere they want, when they want, so they can go and visit people. Or might sound ludicrous, but who's to say that's not the way it is?
Yeah.
They can just get up and go. So maybe
where would you go? You're a spirit. You can go anywhere you want in the world.
Graceland.
I go to the Vatican archives, but okay. I just float down there and shift you through all their books.
Can you imagine having that? I mean, it's the kind of thing you see in a movie. People can just go where they want. But can you imagine? You're in spirit, or you're not too happy that you're in spirit. Still quite a bit today, but however, I think, right, where am I going to go? And you can go anywhere you want. Which brings me to another question. Once I put these comments, I find white feathers inside laptop often, and they sport in my house regularly. Nicola Digman witnessed it as well. Nicola's, she's a friend of yours as well, and Eileen. She runs Whispering Souls Paranormal.
I've had reports that, oh my God, that's something that happened with that little man. After that little man saw me, stones would appear in the middle of the room and fall on my head. That's it. Wherever I went, I get a stone thrown at my head out of nowhere. But not there was no one around, and it would just drop on my head. And it all came to a head at the office. Actually, I can't remember. When you just start thinking, it's like, oh my God, that's huge. I should tell you that. It was while the stones were being thrown, I'd just seen this little man, and we'd gone back to work, and I was in the office, and three things happened. Three things weird happened. There was we had a cup of coffee. each, and all of a sudden, my friend, who was an absolute skeptic, non-believer, his coffee mug just started going across the thing, and I was like, "Is there water underneath it? 'Cause, you get water planing." And I was like, he's like, "No," and you could see it being dragged across. It was making the noise, and then we were just like, "That was odd." And then one of my job at the university is we keep all the keys for the campus. So if anyone needs to go and do anything, they come and collect the keys off us. And there was a bunch of keys just appeared in midair and fell on the floor. And they didn't belong to us. All our keys were accounted for. And then someone from another office came in, and he looked really flustered. He said, "I've lost some keys." And I said, "Are these them?" And he's like, "They were just on my desk in another office. They had ported into our office and were on the floor." No one could figure out how they got there because the guy hadn't come into our office. And then I went to put some keys away, and there was nothing sharp in there. And I felt this really sharp pain in my finger, and I pulled it out, and I had a metal shard stuck in my finger from something. It looked like a tiny little dagger. I was just like, this is getting weird now.
Maybe it was the man you seen. Maybe how that's him getting you back for the thingy, for seeing him.
Well, around the same time, I'd hired someone to clear some of the garden, and they cleared a bit much and took down, if you know your folklore, you're going to go, "Oh God, a hawthorn tree." You don't do that.
So maybe they weren't happy and they were blaming you because it was your garden.
The tree started growing again, and I haven't had anything happen since. So don't move your hawthorn trees, please.
Don't we? It's weird you say about the keys moving and stuff. You add that in my flat. It happened twice, but I'll just tell you about one. I was a creature of habit. When you got the TV remote, you turn the telly off at night, and then you put it on I used to put it on the front of the telly. Religiously, you do without thinking. One day I could not find it. I went to get the remote and it wasn't there. I could not find it. And again, I lived myself. Hunted everywhere in the flat for the remote. I thought, where is it? I cannot find it.
Where was it?
And my bed sat about a foot and a half off the ground, off the floor. I just happened to look in the bedroom and I seen something black underneath, about halfway underneath the bed. And I think, I never kept anything under the bed, so I thought, what the hell's that? So I went under the bed and it was the TV remote. And I says to people, and they say, "Oh, you must have moved it and stuff." I said, well, why would I put my TV remote?
I think you remember putting it there.
Halfway underneath my bed. It just but that's where I found it. I thought, right, I can't explain that. How did they get from A to B? As I say, people say, "Oh, you did it." Doesn't make any sense. Why would I put it underneath my bed where I couldn't find it? So, these things do happen. See, my last week, the fella and me feel off in Craig fainting. It was all a sign. I've had drinks twice recently in the Banshee Lab. Well, a lot of people maybe laugh. As you say, we're skeptics. If you're talking crap, there's got to be a logical explanation for that happening. Maybe there is, and we're probably the same as yourself. If somebody can give us a logical explanation for something happening, then fair dues. We always just say we can't explain it.
I think that's the healthy skeptic, because I know there's a lot of programs where it's like, "Oh, you're a skeptic or a believer." Well, a skeptic's not a non-believer. There's non-believer, skeptic, believer. You can be a skeptical believer, which is what I am. I don't think everything is paranormal. I don't think everything is magical. Most of the time it's not. But there's a small amount that possibly is. Hopefully is.
You've got to be, I always say I'm 80% believer, 20% skeptic. You've got to have that be skeptic bit in you. There is a people out there, I call it the parawagon. As soon as something that's paranormal, oh, that's a spirit. It could be a car driving by or a bird farting or something. Or did you hear that? That's definitely a spirit. But
I tried to convince some of my TV shows I do, because I'm the historian on them, like for Help My House Is Haunted, and there was one TV show that, because people put comments on Facebook all the time, oh, you happened to find a ghost, did you? Yeah, but you haven't seen the amount of research on other properties that didn't come up with anything. This is the one we're showing you because it came up with stuff. But there was one, and I think I found the explanation, and I thought it was fascinating, and I think it still would have made a good episode showing what could be the potential. So there was this property. I won't tell you what show it was or what property it was, but basically there was a property that had a lot of farm machinery and a lot of things moving around. So like they would look out the window and there would be no one in the, like one of the tractors or anything, and they just see it moving. The piano upstairs would start playing itself, and it was really fascinating, and it must have been quite scary. But one of the things I do when I research any property, I'll go straight back to the OS maps and the geological surveys. And I found, and I thought this was interesting, their house was on top of a fault line in Britain.
I watched that last night.
Which one was that?
I watched that.
Did they show it? I didn't know if they showed it because I gave it to them.
Nightmare in Neath.
Oh, I was on Nightmare in Neath. No, this was a different one. I don't think it aired because there was a rational explanation. Nightmare in Neath, I think there was stuff with the mines that were underneath.
I watched two last night. I keep hearing a noise through these headphones. I don't know what.
I think it's me. I think because I got Facebook on in the background because that's where you sent the link. Let me turn off Facebook.
Is that what it is? I keep hearing.
Do you know what it? Do you want to know what it is? One of my friends is lost in the wood right now.
All right.
They went on a ghost hunt and they're lost in the woods.
I'm sure maybe Spirit will guide them home.
No. They thought they had disturbed something Fae related, and they turned the jacket inside out and apologized, and they found their way out straight away. So hey.
Well, there you go. That's another one for skeptics to explain. I watched two last night. One was about a house, just when it says fault lines, and there had been an earthquake. The lady that owned the house, she was a former hairdresser, and there was a lady spirit in the house who was nice, never caused any problems. But then there was an earthquake, and straight after this earthquake, I'm trying to remember whereabouts the house was. Straight after the earthquake, the house felt different. It felt as if there was something negative in it.
Well, that was another thing I said. I said, so this is my skeptical explanation. I think there's tremors that's causing things to move. But there's so much folklore and so many stories about subterranean entities. That's beneath the ground is the last wild place in Britain, really. And we don't know what's down there. If you talk to miners, I'm currently collecting a lot of miners' folklore stories for the horror I'm writing. And again, I was talking to this chap. He's an ex-miner, lovely guy, Welsh, from the valleys, and he was very sort of like proper. I don't know any of those stories, but I'll do what I can to help. 2 minutes later, well, actually, there was this time, and he said, yeah, there was this big disaster, and we knew who was going to die because birds were on top of but the birds would gather on their house, and I was like, oh, really? Keep talking, and then it all came out. He had all this folklore that was going to get lost. I segue. I do this. I go off on tangents. Why did I go off on that tangent? Subterranean. So, yes, that's the skeptical explanation. There was an earthquake. Perhaps that's why your piano's like playing. That's why your machinery's moving across the thing. But I'm not saying that's explaining everything. So it could be that it shifted something in the atmosphere. There could be something like if something has become loose from underneath. There's all these different stories of Tommyknockers and things. It doesn't necessarily have to be Tommyknockers. Yeah.
The first one I watched, this lady in it. She says directly after the earthquake, she could feel, you know, I'm not going to use the word evil or demonic or anything, but it was very nice, you know. It was felt it was a male, and it was concentrated in one bit of the house.
Mm.
It was like top landing or something. It was just a very, very small area, top of the stairs. And it seemed to be after the earthquake. Just when you mentioned the earthquake there, I thought that's the episode you were talking about. The other one I watched was with Roy Wood's ex-wife.
Oh yeah.
I watched that one. But do you think? I mean, I quite like it. I watched quite a few of the episodes over time, you know. And but you again go back to the skeptic, but you're going to get people watching that are thinking, right, it's all fake, you know, and obviously they've been tarnished by I'm not going to mention the other ghost shows. I'm doing the thing you do, you know, those ones.
I know the ones
shall
you mean.
remain unnamed. And so, do you think these days that when people watch these shows, you know, they immediately think that they're all fake, even though they're not? Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm trying to, because I've been in the shows, so I know. The way it's shot is quite dramatic with the music, but from knowing how you go about the investigation from early on and trying to get all your sources, I know that I'm quite methodical. So, like Nightmare in Neath and all that, I did a lot of research, and there was connections. Some of the times, I will be honest and say it's actually odd. I couldn't find anything. I think it was a Joe Woods one. I was like, this house, even though it's the centre of the community, does not come up on any records, and I actually found that really weird. So something happened. It's almost like something was buried. But I think we are primed a little bit, and the ghost shows that we don't name, where the camera's pointing at them and they're screaming and running away. It makes you a bit frustrated, because that was me. If someone would finally take me on an investigation, I'd run towards the noise.
I've said that so many times, Bethan. You get these ghost shows and they hear a noise, or, you know, a stone gets thrown, whatever it might be, and they're all running for the car. They're all back in the car.
Poor ghost, but how much energy? They said, can you give us a sign? This knackered entity has probably used every last ounce to pick up something. And then it's, yes, I did give them what they want. They're going to talk to me. And then they run off screaming. That ghost must be so livid.
The spirit's sitting there going, where are you going? You know,
where are you going?
Why? Another way, I've got a question for Laura for you. I'll stick it up. Another thing that I've seen, and I don't know if it angers me or just amuses me, but I've seen on some of these shows, I need to stop doing it. Billy Connolly used to rip the fabric out of people who did this, you know, from it. But they'll be out investigating, and they'll pick up something, a noise, whatever, and they go and hide behind a wall. I remember one ghost show, I'm not going to name it, that they did, and there was four of them standing behind a wall, and it's in the property, and I think it was an old abbey or something, but they were on behind this wall, and I'm watching it thinking, who are you hiding from?
Who are you hiding from?
Do you not think the spirits know there to play hide and seek? Well, I wonder where did they go? You know, and you think, why are you hiding? Do you not think the spirit can see you? You know,
Yeah.
And
or if it is a replay, it doesn't matter where you stand.
No, that's always thinking me. But I'll stick this question up before we carry on. It's for Laura. How do you feel about animal spirits?
Oh God, animals have spirits. Yeah. No, so this friend of mine who's a medium, who doesn't want to be a medium, she laughs whenever she sees me and Arthur, because she's like, you two are ridiculous. I was like, why? She said, well, I've apparently got a massive horse that follows me around, and a little old lady, because she likes the ghost stories I collect. So I've got an old lady and a horse that followed me. And she said, I've never seen anyone with as many animals as your son. So my son comes in with an entire forest, apparently. And I've been stroking a cat that I thought was there and looked down, and my cat has been at the top of the garden. There's nothing there. I've seen dogs I've known. Animals are the best. That we don't deserve them. Of course, they've got spirits. They go straight to heaven, or they come and visit to make us feel better. Animal ghosts are the best. Totally believe in animal ghosts. Cryptids, different.
I think animal spirits. If you've got a cat or a dog that you've had for decades, whatever, and then they suddenly pass, they are going to come back, and visit you because obviously they'll miss you, same as you miss them.
Of course, yeah.
And they want to come up and sit in your lap or beside you, whatever the case may be. They sometimes stay so. I would probably
probably some of them. I mean, I've never, again, because no one will take me, but I've never been on the investigation, so I don't quite know. I like to think that it's not staged. There might be some bits that are staged because we can't just have a whole hour of someone sat there trying to talk. So they're going to try and set some things up to happen. Hopefully it is just, if it happens, it happens. But from my point of view of the programs I've been on, they've been honest. There's a lot that goes on that you don't see on the show.
My spirit cat is on my bed now as I watch you.
Hello.
I can feel him grooming and settling. As you say, there's a lot goes on. I like the shows, and Help My House is Haunted. They've done it where they say, Ian Lawson, is that his name? The medium guy. He's been into houses and he's come out and says there's nothing there.
Yeah.
And that's what I like.
When they find something, it's like, no.
Night, dear. Probably talk to you tomorrow, Flower. Lord's away to bed, I think. It's when they come out and they say, right, I've had a walk around the house. I can't find anything. I'm not picking up anything. Then you know that person is genuine. Because the other side of the coin is these other shows, they'll come and say, there's a demon in there.
God, don't get me started on the demons.
There's a murder victim in there. He's angry and all the rest. But when you get a guy that comes and says, no, there's nothing there, then
I do trust
this guy's
being
honest. I've got nothing. Another thing I like about it is that they go to people's houses. You get these shows and they concentrate in big old famous manor houses or castles or these places are nice, but they never go into Betty's front room or something like that.
Also, I wish they do more in the daytime because I can literally name. I've only had 2 or 3 experiences at night, ghost-wise. All the rest have been daytime. I wish they do more daytime. I was like, we're going to do a night vigil. No, do a day vigil.
We've done. We've been asked that as well before. Why do you always investigate at night? So, well, we don't. I like investigating at night because there's less.
There's less atmosphere and there's less.
There's less people about basically.
Yeah, less sound. I can understand why it's done, but
there's a wee bit. It creates no, you're trying to make a movie or anything like that, but it creates. If you're in a graveyard and it's dark, it creates a wee bit of an atmosphere for folk watching. Because 9 times out of 10, our investigations are live, but we've done many investigations during the day and had, activity during the day. Maybe no hundreds of it, but that we have had activities. So I think a lot of it's just for atmosphere and effect. I'm no expert. That's just my opinion. I might be wrong.
Yeah, probably.
But
and that's the thing. Yes, something's not staged, but there are. That it is an entertainment program at the end. They got to make it entertaining. So yeah, dramatic night, misty. The dramatic walks on, which I've never got to do yet. I want to do a dramatic walk on.
They appear through the mist.
Yeah.
The stage bit, the worst bit of staging I've ever seen. One of us was on I think he's still running the show, but it's back about 20 years or something. And they did the Edinburgh Vault. So the medium on the show's passed away. You probably know who I'm talking about.
I've already guessed, yeah.
But I used to watch it religiously. I bought all the DVDs and stuff like that.
Now and again out of nostalgia.
I do it for a laugh. sometimes I'll stick a wee episode on just to, you know.
I've become quite good friends with one of the skeptics, so that's quite fun.
I say, here, watch this. Wait, you should get this. But I remember they did the Edinburgh Vaults, you know, and they always told you that the medium went in blind. He didn't know where he was going. They didn't know where he was going to go. You know, we did his wee walkabout. But there was one, they did the Edinburgh Vaults, and he stopped and he looked in this hole in the wall. And then it went to the shot went to him looking inside the I don't know, the hole, whatever you call it. And it wasn't until later on, I don't know, ages later, that I watched it again. I thought, wait a minute, if they don't know where he's going, why was there a camera in that hole?
Yeah, they do it all the time. Like, there's already the crew inside the house, and they have to do the whole pretense. Oh, hi, how are you?
Oh, that gets me. You see that all the time, you know. And the camera's already in the house, and you hear the door chattering. And
I think whenever I've done it, I've had to walk on and greet the presenter and like shake hands and then sat down. We've been having a drink for an hour beforehand, and you know, been laughing away, but we have to pretend we've just met.
it's the same in these shows. We do these shows, you know. Obviously, we have a wee 5-10 minute chat, you know, backstage as we call it, you know, before it starts. But then when you start the show, it's a kind of normal thing. Well, thanks for joining. How are you? I already know how you are because everybody asks you 10 minutes.
No one saw us Googling was Ronnie Corbett alive.
Well, we were Googling before we came on who was still with us, who wasn't still with us. And you know, and Bethan couldn't remember if Ronnie Corbett was still, you know, on the right side of the grass. Unfortunately, he isn't. You know, Phil Wyman is someone I respect. I've heard that a lot. I've never met the guy. I've never interviewed the guy, but I've heard that quite a bit. He's quite. One lady I do is Jane Harris. I'd love to get Jane Harris on, but see, try to get a hold of her.
I think she's taking a little bit of a break for the moment because she's got another business, but it might just be that. But yeah, Jane's lovely. I've met Jane a few times now, and Barry. They're a nice team.
That's what I like about them as well. There's no showmanship.
No, they do take the mick out of each other as well. Like Barry and his, like, he's got one of those, like, you know, military vests on, and the banter is brilliant. So they don't take themselves too seriously.
See, what do you keep in your vest, Barry? You know,
I know for a fact he keeps sweets in one of them.
But you get, that's the other thing that gets in my nerves. You know, this isn't a rant, by the way, but it's when you watch some of the teams and that, like on YouTube quite a bit, and they're dressed up as if they're going to war with Iraq or something. They're on black.
There's someone around here that has an emergency light on top of their car, and that can't be legal.
But for going
full tactical gear for ghost hunting.
What is that, a blue light?
I don't know if it's blue or red, but either way.
I've never heard that. I've heard the Ghostbusters in the film.
It is like Ghostbusters.
Yeah, you get a call in the middle of the night, you know, right? Spirit spotted it, you know, such and such, and he's out in the motor, right? Let's go, light flashed out.
I don't know what he does when he gets
seriously. I don't know. I'd love to meet that guy.
Me too. If he's listening, please. Maybe he can take an investigation.
Why does nobody want to take you on an investigation?
I think because there's like sort of like the nerds that do the research, and we hand that research over. I think the last Help My Host is Haunted, I tried to wheedle onto the investigation, but they couldn't get it cleared in time. So I need to be more ballsy. I'm like, can I come to the bloody house this time because I want to see it?
Have you ever thought of doing your own?
Yes. Me and some friends are working on a folklore TV show with some. Well, with Eerie Essex, we want to do some. With me and Elsa, with our podcast. We're taking a bit of a break over the summer, but we're going to use it to go out and maybe do some investigations. I've got somebody who's an abductee who wants to talk to us. That's going to be quite frightening because I know some of the story and it's quite scary. I find aliens scarier than ghosts.
I don't know. As you said earlier on, I believe that there is life on another planet. Have we been visited? Probably. They probably came here and had a look about and thought, no, sod that, we're off. Do you remember how it was last year? There was a big scare in America because everybody was claiming it was UFOs, but it turned out
apparently that's still going on. They just not. I've got friends over there, and they're like, yeah, the drones are still out everywhere. These lights, they're everywhere, but they're just not newsworthy anymore.
But I think it was balloons. It was weather balloons or something.
There was the first ones was the weather balloons. They were Chinese weather balloons, weren't they? So they were worried they were Chinese balloons, but they were just weather balloons that had come untethered. And then there was the ones that were, I mean, people filmed them. They did look the size of buses, these drones going over, where was it now? It was a coastal one.
I don't know. There's been quite a few of them.
Yeah.
With people. The other thing, there is a channel there. I'm not going to name them, but the guy claims to be a starseed.
Oh, there's a couple of those, yeah. Bashar.
No, this guy. I'll tell you the name of the channel after we come up. He claims to be.
Is he bald with like really piercing blue eyes?
Quite heavy set.
Yeah, he says he's a Pleiadian.
But the thing that got me about, I was watching this guy once, and he says he was the grey people had left. Now I'm not doubting, but he said the grey, and then he said the draconians have left as well. But I knew that name draconian sounded familiar, so I googled it, and it turned out the draconians were a race of aliens featured in Doctor Who in the 70s.
But yeah, the Doctor Who did take a lot of its ideas from actual events as well, and actual folklore. The draconians like the lizardy reptilians.
You need to speak to Malcolm Robertson about UFOs, Bethan.
I'm writing that down. I've seen several UFOs, and I've even.
You see, I don't know. To my knowledge, I've never seen one. Again, I'm not saying they don't exist. I believe they do, but I've never actually. I've heard people say, "Oh, I was abducted. I lost an hour out of my life," and I remember being at the top of the hill. But the next minute, I was down at the bottom of the hill. Don't remember getting there.
Yeah.
But some of these people.
Thank you.
Some of these people that I've listened to are quite questionable. One of them had claimed to be Maid Marian, reincarnated. And she was also a high priestess. She was a ordained exorcist, and then all of a sudden she became.
You never get someone who's like. I'd love to see someone who's regressed. I was Phil the plumber.
See, I've said. And if you watch your shows, you'll hear me say I've said that as well. You never get Fred the Butcher, John the Baker. You always get Henry VIII, Cleopatra, Nero, whoever. It's always somebody from Napoleon.
I want a Gladys from the corner.
You never get wee Gladys around the corner who used to sell the papers. Never. It's always somebody, exciting, somebody famous, And that's why I was going to talk about Help My House is Haunted. I'm watching the time. I'm going to wind it up soon. That's the other thing I like about that show. They go to people's houses. They don't do the big stately. I do say they have in the past. I've not watched every episode, but they just go to normal people, everyday people's houses.
Yeah.
Do you think? I know you've not done an investigation, but I always find that these kind of places have more activity than these big stately homes and famous castles and stuff.
I think so, because they're lived in rather than just. If you think these stately homes, they're more liminal spaces. No one actually lives there. It's people passing through all day. I think there's something about a home where people are in it all the time that it becomes more active because there's more energy there. There's more connection. Whereas it's almost like it's a fancy hallway. People are just passing through it all day long. No one stays. No one owns. Maybe doesn't have the same energy.
And you also, yeah, maybe another reason is because maybe in these like stately homes, spirits is just fed up.
Yeah.
With people bothering them, basically, whereas you get these, people's houses and that where only family friends go and nobody ever bothers talking to, these spirits that might be there. And I think, oh, well, I'm going to talk to you because you came to talk to me, But, as you get maybe like Hampton Court, Hever Castle, places like that, people have investigated, blah, blah, blah. Think, oh, do you know what? I'm not doing this again.
Yeah.
Don't ask me to scream and run up and down the hallway again, because I'm fed up. I've worn out 5 pair of shoes doing this. I'm not doing it again. And they're just basically fed up. And that's what I think. I mean, we're not a technical team. No disrespect to all these teams out there that use it. We don't use a lot of gadgets because at the end of the day, we believe spirit is basic. You're talking it's from one person to another. And spirit doesn't care what kind of gadgets or cameras and all the rest of you've got. They just want to talk to somebody.
Our eyes see them. We haven't got the technology, I think.
I mean, I think I've seen. There was one time in Loudon. And I don't know if we were investigating, and I glanced over. There was a big bush or a tree, a big bush or something, and I thought I seen a young girl. Now, we have picked up on a young girl numerous times here, but I thought I seen a young girl just kind of peek out. So it was a split second, and then she was gone. It was one of these scenarios you're thinking, well, did I see her? Did I not see her? Because nobody else, Thanks so much for the chat, been fabulous, very interesting. I would love to sit and chat with Bethan. Maybe one day you'll come to. I'm going to ask you if she wants to come back on, Eileen. If she come back on, then I can get you on as well. And you can.
Yeah, and I do want to come to Scotland. I've never been.
You've never been to Scotland?
No, I own land in.
Do you?
Yeah, 1 square foot of land. One of those.
But does that make? I might have this wrong.
Lady of Kincavel or something.
As soon as you buy even 1 square foot, like you become a lord or a lady, whatever.
Yes, it's a what do you call it? One of those. It's a way to preserve the land because no one's going to build on it now because hundreds of thousands of people own 1 square foot. It's a way to preserve the landscape, and it's fun to own that.
So you get a fancy thing. B, do you want to buy a square bit of grass and we'll be called the Lord and Lady?
Oh, you can do that.
A couple of £. So that we'll do that. We'll buy it off the Amazon. They're cheaper. You buy anything off the Amazon these days. I guess you can buy land, maybe.
Probably. But I'm going to come up to Scotland. I'm come to see. I want to see a couple of friends up in Edinburgh, and we'll do the rounds up to Aberdeen.
Glasgow.
I was going to add Glasgow. Got new friends now.
Just as well. I'm originally from Glasgow, but we live in Kilmarnock, which is about 15 minutes west. We're near the west coast. We're kind of in between Glasgow and the west coast.
Is that the most westerly peninsula?
In Scotland, the most westward peninsula.
Ardmannach.
Be the most northern peninsula is John O'Groats. So obviously
that's where my land is.
Western is. That's a good question, actually, because there's lots of wee bits that jot out.
I seem to remember Ardmannach or something like that, or I don't know. Well, that's where my little land is. It's quite pretty where it is.
I don't know though. But we're in between Glasgow and Ayr, so we're about 15 minutes for Glasgow and the motorway. So it's easy to get to for when you come up. But Edinburgh, we've done a lot in Edinburgh since we started about 5 years ago, and we've done tons in Edinburgh, bit Island in Edinburgh as well.
Have you talked to Eerie Edinburgh, the podcast with Wayne?
No, I have not. No.
Oh, you'd like Wayne.
I'm going to
Erie,
write that.
Edinburgh. He's our Erie brother. We do Erie Essex. He does Erie, Edinburgh. We've got like a.
I'm going to write that one down. Erie. We were through there, as I say, we were through there last Thursday, but it was absolutely mobbed. It's just the time of year it is. It's tourist season, you know. And then, obviously, the fringe coming up will get busier, and tattoos coming up will get busier, and then you're heading towards tattoos in August. Then you get a couple of months, and then it's Halloween time, which is a major time. Well, it's a big time everywhere, but Edinburgh, it's nuts at
Are you
Halloween.
going to the Fringe?
No.
Oh,
No.
as a paranormal folklore comedian.
Yeah, I used to deliver in Edinburgh. For years I delivered in Edinburgh, and I used to drive the trucks, and I was there during Fringe time as well, obviously, and you literally cannot walk down the mile. Eileen will tell you as well, because of the sheer amount you need to fight to walk down the mile. And
Right. Well, that sounds
back then,
quite
when
chaotic,
I
yeah.
drove the trucks, you could drive right up and down the mile, but now they've shut off. Like I said, Thursday when we were there, they've shut off the top section that leads up to the castle, so that's all shut. And then there's a big middle bit of the mile that's all a pedestrian bit now as well. That's all shut up, and it's just it's nuts, you know. I was in Banshee with Wayne Erie. All right,
I love Wayne from Erie.
I'm going to need to get in touch. I've never heard it. I'm going to look him up after we come off, actually. Thanks for that. I've never. See, all our contacting in was done with Jamie Christopherson.
What was that?
You know, Jamie Christopherson, who runs Sight of the Dead tours.
Oh, yeah.
He's based in, his office is in Greyfriars. As you get into Greyfriars, it used to be the old, I think the old toll house or something. At the gate, there's a wee round building. That's their office. So he's been there for about 16 years or something. He's been doing it, and he's there 5-6 days a week. And they say that this guy's knowledge is second to none. Eileen met him a few times as well. There's nothing this guy doesn't know about Edinburgh, the old town. Great, you know. He's your sort of go-to guy if you want to know anything about Greyfriars.
I want to meet him. I want to meet Wayne. I want to meet Evelyn Hollow and you guys.
Well, there you go. Come to Scotland then, and we'll all gather in Edinburgh. We'll have a gathering, the clans.
Okay.
In Edinburgh. But I'm going to wind it up there, but I do want to bring you back on, Bethan, if that's all right, because I can talk to you for ages. But I'll hold on to you just after we come off. So where can people find you?
You can find me in person at the East Anglian Folklore Centre in Colchester. You can find me on podcasts. I do a Welsh folk horror called Spectre of the Sea with Owen Staten, who's got the most amazing Welsh accent. It's like honey. And Erie Essex, which is looking at the weirdness of the county, and Help My House is Haunted. I'm on the next celebrity one, the Cardiff one, and I get to present this time.
When you went to Cardiff, did you get the Welsh cakes?
Yeah.
You did. They're amazing.
I love Welsh cakes. I absorbed all the Welshness because I've not lived there in years. So
John Tantallon and Graham Milne are interesting too, both authors in Edinburgh. I used to have friends who lived in Cwmbran.
Oh, you said in Cwmbran, yeah. Well, my Owen, who I do Spectre, he's from Cwmbran.
I had friends there and down to visit them once, and it was actually a heat wave. Talk to you soon, though. I'm looking forward to Friday or to my lunch. So we went down to visit him one time, and there was a rugby player. I think half of Welshmen are rugby players, aren't they?
Yeah.
But we went out to his local rugby club, you know, and we were sitting, and he said, "I'm going to take you to meet all the boys and that." So all night, people, he was seeing us as Scott, he's from Glasgow. All night, people were coming up, you know, all the rugby players were coming up and saying, you know, "You're Scott," I say, "I'm from Glasgow." Swear for me. What? Swear at me. I said, "Tell me to F off or something." So I spent the entire night telling rugby players to go off. And they thought it was amazing. Oh, I think that's great. Say it again. So the end of the night, Robert, my mate's name was, I said, I said, I had a great night. I said, but they all wanted me to swear at them. I said, they were all telling me to tell them to F off and stuff. I said, they didn't want to talk to me.
Oh,
You
no.
know, they didn't want to have a conversation with me. They just wanted me to tell them, they come in and say, right, I'm Graham, tell me F off. F off, Graham.
Oh, no.
Great,
Like a performing monkey. Do it.
Do you know what
I apologise on behalf of my countrymen.
But I got to the stage, like, why does nobody want to talk to me? I find out where I am in my background or what I do for a living or anything. You just want to tell me F off. All right, mate. Oh, excellent. I'm away to get the next one.
Yeah. You could have said, I will if you buy me a pint, and then you could have made some money on it.
Oh, I was drunk most nights that Welshman can drink. We went out to Cardiff one day. Always remember Robert took me into Cardiff and we were sitting at the castle. There was a wee cafe thing at the corner facing the castle. And they sold beer and stuff like that. And the two get hammered basically. Mm-hmm. And so there was a heat wave the entire week and the two get absolutely hammered and try to get back on the train for Cardiff back to Cwmbran and what have you. Let's just say that was an adventure as well when you're absolutely steamboats, shall we say, But no, I had a great time. The people were absolutely brilliant, And they had a few barbecues and his friends would come round and, sit and chat away, the rest of them. And they were absolutely beautiful people, And they say the countryside itself, the towns and that are amazing. And I think the sunshine just kind of topped off. But the swearing thing was very bizarre. I will say that. I've never been to a town and people just told me to tell them to F off.
Massive rugby players as well.
But, it made their night, so I was a happy man. And I'd got quite a few beers into the bargain. So,
there you go.
It was it all ended well. But we'll wind it up there, folks. So a big thanks to Bethan for coming in. You will be seeing her again. Definitely. And so we're back tomorrow night with a brand new team, actually. I'm just going to plug them a wee bit for 2 seconds. Forth Valley Paranormal Investigators. They only started out, they did their first investigation ever last week. So they're only about a week and a half old. So we're getting them on tomorrow night for a wee chat. And Rigger Spig, he's going to be joining us as well. So that's tomorrow night. But tonight, but major thanks to this lady. And give her a look up. She's everywhere, basically. She gets about.
I do get
in a good way. I mean that in a good way. She's quite popular. You can't really get back in that, can you? You know what I mean?
I'll take it. Whatever.
She's on TV. Put it that way. That's.
Yay.
I think that sounds better, doesn't it? You're on TV. I was on TV once, but I fell off it.
You fell off it?
I was sitting happy as devil. Fell off it. We joke there, folks,
Yeah, I fell into that.
See, some people actually, were you actually on TV? I say, aye, but I fell off the bugger. So you're not ready to sit and tap a plasma telly. And go, takes me a couple of seconds to register. Aye, okay, very funny. Do you know what I mean?
And then you get
we'll say good night, folks, and we'll talk to you tomorrow night and etc. You see us later soon. All right, cheers it out. Bye. Bye.